Hold a matchstick in your hand. Look at it closely. It is just a tiny, simple piece of wood with a red tip. You can buy a box of them for pennies. You strike it against the box and whoosh, you have fire. It seems so simple, doesn't it? We use them to light birthday candles. We use them to start campfires. We use them without even thinking. But what if I told you that this tiny little stick has a history that is more terrifying than a horror movie? What if I told you that the ingredient used to make the first matches was discovered in a dungeon by boiling buckets of human urine? And what if I told you that this same ingredient caused a disease so terrible it made people's faces glow green in the dark before their bones fell apart? Welcome to the Mundane Files. Today, we are going to look at the secret history of the matchstick. This isn't just a story about fire. This is a story about magic, poison, and a sickness that turned ordinary people into real-life monsters. To understand why the matchstick was so dangerous, we have to travel back in time. We are going back over 300 years to the year 1669. Imagine a dark, cold basement in Hamburg, Germany. Inside, there is a man named Hennig Brand. He is an alchemist. Now, if you don't know what an alchemist is, think of them as a mix between a scientist and a wizard. They believed they could do magic with chemicals. And Hennig Brand was obsessed with one thing. He wanted to find the philosopher's stone. He believed there was a magical substance that could turn ordinary metal into solid gold. He wanted to be rich. He wanted to be famous. But he had a very strange idea about where to find this magic gold. He looked at the human body. He thought, gold is yellow, and there is something else that comes out of the human body that is yellow. Yes, he was thinking about urine. Brand believed that if he could collect enough human urine and boil it down, he would find gold hidden at the bottom. So he started collecting. He didn't just collect a cup or a bucket, he collected over 1,500 gallons of urine. He kept it in his basement until it smelled absolutely terrible. Then he started to boil it. He boiled it for days and nights. The smell was awful. He boiled it until it turned into a thick black syrup. And then he heated it even hotter. He waited for gold to appear. But he didn't find gold. One night, in the pitch-black darkness of his basement, something strange happened. The glass container he was holding started to glow. It wasn't hot like fire. It was a cold, ghostly, pale green light. He took the substance out. When it touched the air, it burst into flames. Hennig Brand had just discovered a new element. He called it Phosphorus, which means light bearer. It was beautiful, it was magical, it glowed in the dark. But Hennig Brand didn't know that he had just discovered one of the most poisonous substances on Earth. He had discovered what future scientists would call the devil's element. Now, let's jump forward in time to the early 1800s. Back then, life was very hard. There was no electricity. There were no light bulbs. If you wanted to see at night, you needed a candle or a lantern. And to light that candle, you needed fire. But making fire was incredibly difficult. You couldn't just click a lighter. You had to use a piece of flintstone and a piece of steel. You had to hit them together, clack, 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 and hope that a tiny spark would land on some dry leaves. If it was raining, you had no fire. If your hands were cold and shaking, you had no fire. If you were in a rush, too bad. People were desperate. They wanted instant fire. They wanted a way to carry fire in their pocket. Inventors remembered Hennig Brandt's glowing green rock. They realized that white phosphorus caught fire very easily, so they decided to put it on the end of a wooden stick. In 1827, the first friction matches were sold, but they weren't called matches, they were called lucifers. Lucifer is another name for the devil, and that name was perfect because these matches were evil. These early matches were terrifying. First of all, they were dangerous. If you walked down the street and the matches in your pocket rubbed against each other, they would explode. People's pants would literally catch on fire while they were walking. Second, the smell. When you lit one, it didn't smell like wood smoke. It smelled like rotten eggs and sulfur. It would fill your house with a thick, choking gas that made you cough. And third, they were violent. Sometimes, instead of lighting a small flame, the match would explode like a firework. It would spray burning chemicals onto your hand, or worse, into your eyes. But despite the danger, people loved them. For the first time in human history, you could make fire in 1 second. It was a miracle. Factories started opening up all over London, New York, and Paris. They needed to make millions of matches every day. But the factory owners had a problem. They needed workers who had small fingers to handle the tiny wooden sticks, and they needed workers who they could pay very little money. So they hired young girls. These were the match girls. Some of them were teenagers. Some were as young as 6 years old. They were poor. They needed money to feed their families, so they went to work in the match factories. They didn't know it yet, but they were walking into a death trap. Imagine walking into one of these factories in the year 1860. The first thing that hits you is the smell. It smells like garlic and poison. The air is thick with white smoke. Inside, there are huge pots of heated white phosphorus. The mixture looks like a glowing white paste. The job of the match girls was to stand over these pots and dip the wooden sticks into the poison all day long, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. The phosphorus was everywhere. It settled on their clothes. It settled in their hair. It covered their hands. There was no place to wash up. When it was time for lunch, the girls didn't leave the factory. They sat right there at their workbenches. They ate their bread with phosphorus-covered hands. They were literally eating the poison with every bite. At first, nothing happened. The girls would work for a few years and everything seemed fine. But then the pain would start. It usually began as a toothache. A girl would complain that her jaw hurt. She would go to the doctor, and the doctor would think it was just a bad tooth. He would pull the tooth out, but the wound wouldn't heal. Instead of getting better, the pain got worse. The girl's gum would start to swell up. It would turn purple, and then it would start to leak a horrible, foul-smelling liquid. This wasn't a normal infection. The phosphorus fumes had soaked into the girl's bones. The poison was attacking her jawbone from the inside. It was killing the bone while she was still alive. The disease was called phosphorus necrosis of the jaw, but the workers had a simpler, scarier name. They called it Phossy Jaw. The symptoms were like something out of a nightmare. The smell from the rotting jaw was so bad that parents couldn't stand to be in the same room as their own children. The girls would have to wrap scarves around their faces to hide the swelling. But the most terrifying thing happened at night. Remember, Hennig Brand discovered phosphorus because it glowed in the dark? Well, the phosphorus was now inside the girls' bones. So if you turned off the lights in the bedroom, the girl's jaw would glow. Imagine looking at someone in the dark and seeing a ghostly green light coming from inside their mouth. That is how much poison was in their bodies. There was no medicine to cure it. There was no pill to take. The only way to save the girl's life was a brutal surgery. Doctors would have to cut open the face and remove the entire jawbone. They had to take the bone out before the poison reached the brain. If they didn't, the girl would die. Many girls survived, but their faces were ruined forever. They couldn't eat solid food. They looked different. And all of this just so people could buy cheap matches. The factory owners knew about this. They knew the white phosphorus was killing their workers. But white phosphorus was cheap, and using safer chemicals would cost more money, so they kept it a secret. They told the girls it was their own fault for having dirty teeth. For a long time, nobody helped these girls. They were poor, they were uneducated, and they had no power. But in the year 1888, things started to change. A journalist named Annie Besant heard about the horrors inside the match factories. She went to London and interviewed the workers. She was shocked. She saw the glowing faces. She saw the missing jawbones. She wrote a furious article in the newspaper called White Slavery in London. She told the world the truth, that every time you struck a match, you were supporting a system that destroyed the lives of young women. The public was angry, but the factory owners refused to change. So the girls did something brave. On a hot summer day in July 1888, the girls at the biggest factory in London stopped working. One girl put down her tools, then another, then another. 1,400 girls walked out of the factory. They went on strike. They were small, they were hungry, but they were loud. They marched through the streets, they told their stories, and for the first time, the powerful factory owners were scared. The strike worked. The bad publicity was costing them money. The factory owners were forced to improve conditions. They had to install fans to clear the smoke. They had to give the girls a separate room to eat lunch so they wouldn't eat poison. But the real hero of this story was science. Chemists figured out that if you heated white phosphorus in a special way, it changed. It turned into a red powder called red phosphorus. Red phosphorus was amazing. It could still make fire, but it wasn't poisonous. It didn't make your jaw rot. It was safe. Inventors created a new kind of match. Instead of putting the chemical on the stick, they painted the red phosphorus on the side of the box. This meant the match would only light if you struck it on the box. It wouldn't explode in your pocket, and it wouldn't kill the workers. They called it the safety match. Slowly, countries around the world began to ban the old poisonous white phosphorus matches. The glowing jaws and the horror of the factories faded into history. So let's look at that matchstick in your hand one more time. Today, when you light a candle, it is safe. You don't have to worry about your jaw falling off. You don't have to worry about explosions. But that tiny flame is the result of hundreds of years of suffering. It is a reminder of the alchemist searching for gold in a dungeon. It is a reminder of the brave girls who walked out of the factory to save their own lives. History is often written in fire, but sometimes the fuel for that fire is human life. This has been the Mundane Files. Thank you for listening to this dark journey into the past. If you learned something new today, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, what ordinary object should I investigate next? The file is closed.